to welcome everyone to Empowering Pastors and Leaders. Today we have a treat. That's you. He's the treat. So we've been having discussions on different staff members with the pastor. Last week we had a session that dealt with the executive pastor in relationship with the senior pastor. And today we'd like to have a discussion with the youth pastor, Pastor Cole Clark. Can you wave at everybody? And the senior pastor, which is me. So we want to have a discussion because this is a relationship that deals with generations. We are a generational church. And the Lord has really pounded that in my spirit for decades, that you cannot be a church that just has one age bracket. In fact, that's how I actually will tell whether it is a healthy church or not if I'm going in and working with one of the pastors. And, when we do pastoral coaching, dealing with how to grow your church. And I'll always go in, and the very first thing I do is I look at the age brackets. And when I see there's just everybody over 40 or everybody over 50 and there's no youth, well, then I know that is a church that is already closed. They just haven't closed yet because there's money in the house. When there are no children, when there are no youth, then there is no church. So it is so important that we have a discussion on how to relate to the youth pastor as a senior pastor, because if you don't relate properly, then you're going to drive them out. I believe statistically that the average youth pastor now stays less than a year. So that means you got kids that are coming, they're building relationships, and now you're turning them upside down. So it is a constant upturn for children, teenagers, who need more than anything else stability in that bracket, and now the youth pastors aren't staying. And, well, let's be honest, in pastoral ministry, the average pastor only stays 4 years. So you can't even impact your community until you start your 5th year. So here we are, youth pastors are leaving so quickly, and they're leaving quickly, which puts them in the position to where they're just going to the next corporate ladder. And I think that's one of the sad parts, Pastor, is many youth pastors come out of Bible school, and they're using the youth pastor position as a stepping stone to get higher in ministry. And I want you to know that is a sin. I'm going to call it what it is. That is a sin. We do not use people as stepping stones. We build people. And if you're using them to be able to climb the spiritual corporate ladder, then you, sir or ma'am, need to step out of ministry and get your hearts correct with Jesus Christ. Because this is about building people. In this house, and I can say that because that is what we represent, in this house, being generational, we have always put most of our finances into youth and children, and our other one is outreach. So these are 3 areas that we've always put large sums of money into, and you can tell me what your core value is, but honestly, if you're not putting money into those core values and value into the core value, then they're really not, no matter what you say. What you say has to be evidenced in manifestation. So in fact, I just got to say this. I was in a church, and sadly enough, there was one person under the age of 18. One. And the pastor said, "Can you help me grow?" And I said, "No." He said, "I'll pay you." And I said, "Yeah, I can't help you." And I couldn't help him for this reason that we're going to talk about today. And that is because that pastor did not care about children and youth, or he would have already had children and youth. So therefore, you can sink all the money into a coach that you want, but if you yourself don't believe in something, you will never do something. So Pastor Cole grew up in the church. How long have you been here?
Got to be around 20 years now.
How old are you?
I'm 23.
So he's been here pretty much his whole life. Amen. And so he's learned, and he learned under Pastor Cody, he learned how to be a dynamic youth pastor who really loves people. Yeah. And so we're honored that you're on staff. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And he's here because we know that he truly, genuinely loves the youth of our region. And so if you'll share with us, what do you find is one of the most important parts of the relationship between a youth pastor and the senior pastor?
Proverbs 20, verse 18 talks about wise counsel. Your plans are established through wise counsel. I'd say that, there's a multitude of counselors in my life, and you are number one. You are my pastor.
Amen.
And I think that's probably and will always be, regardless of where I am or what I'm doing, the most essential part of our relationship together. And it's it's really stemmed from a relationship that was before being a youth pastor. I think that is part of it too. There's so many people that are coming in on a vision, coming in on a relationship. I was raised here, grew here, saved here, discipled here. I understand your heart for me, your purity behind closed doors, all those things factor in, and I see you as counsel in my life. And just as the verse says, counsel isn't there to micromanage your ideas.
Right.
And so I think for me, there's so much freedom in thought, in plan, in progress, in trying to progress my life, ministry, and you are definitely somebody who's like that filter in my life. Like, hey, this is the plan establisher. I have many plans. The word says many are the plans in the mind of man, but it's the will of the Lord that will be established.
Amen.
And the word sets out a clear path on how that is established through godly counsel. And so having you as counsel first and foremost in my life has really helped me in these areas to say, is this wild? Is this crazy? Is this balanced? Is this good for my life, for my first ministry with my wife, and then ministry with the youth? And I think that's always going to remain the most important piece of the relationship.
I think too, mutual respect is extremely important. Now, even though he's much younger than he could definitely be one of my children. I find that, actually, I think you're 6 years younger than my youngest. I have mutual respect for him because I know that he's called. And I know that he has direction. And I know that he's got purpose. And I know that he's got hustle. And with me as the senior pastor, I can place a confidence in him that I'm not going to have to micromanage. Now, this is very important. Youth pastors, hear me clearly. When you are being interviewed for a responsibility, a job at a church, you also have to interview. It's not just you being interviewed. You have to interview. You have to interview because you have to find out what style of leadership the senior pastor has. Now, I know I spoke about this already, but it needs to be brought to remembrance that I am a hands-off leader. I do not micromanage. I am not running behind you. I am not a driver in the aspect of push, 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 push. I do push, but I do it on a corporate leadership style. But I am not mingling and trying to find out exactly everything you're doing in your ministry. I anticipate that if you're in that position as youth pastor, that you have a passion for youth. Yeah. That makes sense, doesn't it?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. And if you have a passion for youth, then I shouldn't have to micromanage you. You're going to make things happen. I might have to train you. I might have to send you places to get higher levels of training. We might have to put more money in your ministry, but I should never have to wonder if you are going to do your job or not, because if it's your passion, then you're driven. If it's not your passion, then you're just going to skate. And so there's such a respect, because my style of leadership, I will not follow up. And after a while, if I see no production, then I just let the person go. And I've let many people go over the years for lack of production. Lack of production means either you're in and wearing the wrong coat, you're not wearing the correct coat, it's not your job, it's not what you're called to, or you're lazy. And in today's kingdom, we don't have the money for lazy people. Jake said it this way. He said, don't tell me what you will do. Don't tell me what you can do. Tell me what you will do. Because everybody comes in, well, that's not my job description. Well, I'm sorry. I don't have the money to pay 1,625 people. I mean, you're going to have to do more than just your call. You're going to have to fill gaps because no church, especially in today's economy, has, in fact, I just heard of a large ministry down in Florida that just let over 50 of their staff members go. And they did that because monies are tight for the kingdom right now. Shouldn't be, but they are. We don't run by the economy of the world, but the fact is that people do. And they give on a Sunday morning. And if they give less, then the church has to run on a lower economic budget. And we're in that posture, even his tabernacle. So everybody that's on staff, especially the youth pastor to me, and the reason for that is he's raising up our next generation leaders. Next week when we have the interview with our children's pastor, she's the launch of it all. She's one of the most important ministries of this church. Why? Well, because if we can't get them to the youth, then we don't have to worry about leadership. So what is your vision and how you take the young people in your ministry to move them into leadership for the future?
I think first it's understanding that I'm more of a steward of vision than I am a creator of vision.
Well stated.
I didn't come into a position where I built from ground zero something that this church already didn't believe in. You know, our core values in our church and what we believe, you know, we're here to love God, save souls, and develop leaders. I mean, that's already a great roadmap for me. I don't have to try to reinvent the wheel. And so my job within the youth ministry and my heart within it is how am I going to get a student to really love God, to really have a passion to see souls saved, and then to turn around themselves and come from a place where, number one, they're comfortable with being discipled. It's a safety net for them. And then out of that comfortability, they become they become someone who disciples others.
Right.
And so when I'm walking with a student, it goes exactly in that order. I didn't have to go and spend 2 years over the last 2 years of research. How can I help this student? It's pretty simple. If I can get them to love God first, like genuine love. And I think that that's something that has shifted within especially in our culture in America. More and more and more, it's less about can we get people to genuinely love God? It's can we get people in attendance? Can we get people to give more? Can we get people to, and so, you know, we have these examples of these giant ministries that I really think ratio to ratio aren't doing as well as they look.
Right.
And they're like, hey, let us show you the example of how we should do it. But I think having the vision of the house has allowed me to see, like, what does it matter if I have 2,000 kids in this building and 10 of them love God?
Right.
You know, give me 50, 60, 70. And it's not a cop-out for I don't want to see the growth. I genuinely do. But it's also about growing a strong foundation within the ministry and within a student's life, which is before you serve, before you turn around and preach, before you do these things, you first have to have that genuine love with God. Then we're going to give you the tools immediately. As soon as I know you have the genuine love for God, we're going to say, here's the word, here's the gospel, go tell everybody about it.
Right.
You don't have to wait until you're 2 weeks, 3 months, 4 years under your belt. If you love God today, we're going to walk this walk with you. And we're going to turn that around into saving souls. And then, you know, we're taking them and we have internships. We're about to start another one up here next Monday.
Is that next Monday?
It's next Monday. We have a student leadership program that runs twice throughout the year that's 16 weeks long. And we teach them, cultural topics, leadership topics, 16 of them to be exact, that we really live and work out here as a church as a whole. And we're teaching that to our students at 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So by the time they graduate, before they even graduate, they're equipped to go and actually not only carry culture, but create people just like them themselves, without a title, without the title of a youth leader or a youth pastor. Before they step into college, they know, like, here's what we carry as a leader. And my leadership isn't within my title more than it's within the influence God's given me. And then by the time they get through their senior year, and they're making probably one of the most wild and biggest decisions of their life, we've either equipped them to go wherever they're going and to be phenomenal in their workplace, phenomenal in another ministry or a part of another internship, or they're going to be here and we're going to give them all the tools that flows right into our next steps as a church, and they're going to get equipped and become a leader here. So that would be like the flow, and that's where I'm looking to funnel everyone into.
Now, I will tell you that because he learned from Pastor Cody, right now, the flow that he has was taught. And your youth pastor needs to be taught. And so we're more than willing here at His Tabernacle Family Church and empowering pastors to be able to help your youth pastor. In fact, if you have people, young people in your church that you know have a call for youth pastor ministry, we actually have in our Bible school, Remnant Bible College, an actual track just for youth pastors. So you don't want to miss that. You want to be able to send your young people up to that track. It's a 3-year track, and they will grow. They will learn how to do it. And when they get back to you, they won't be a sore to you. I was going to say a boil to you. They won't be a sore to you. They'll be a blessing to you. So for me, Pastor Cody did what you're doing, what Pastor Cody did. Right now, majority of our leaders have been brought up through the youth ministry. So the young people over the Bible college now have been brought up through that. We can go through all the different people, Mackenzie, and we can go through all the different people that have been brought up from the youth ministry and are now leading departments at His Tabernacle Family Church. It's because of the youth pastor, because of the focus, because of loving God, saving souls, developing leaders. And as they're developing leaders, they're putting people in position for their future to fulfill God's purpose. So youth to me is huge. Now, Cole, how could a senior pastor best help a youth ministry?
I would have to say something I really enjoy about being here, and something that I've observed is really toxic. You know, I worked in the corporate world for about 6-7 years. And I've been able to meet a lot of people and observe a lot of situations where they don't have encouragement, support, and you touched on it earlier, which is advice. You know, you've done a lot of ministry and you have a lot of great fruit. And I have the ability to, first and foremost, glean from all that you've learned. I mean, there's situations that I go into that I have never encountered before in my life, and I'm just as taken aback as the person who's a part of the situation on what's going on. And I'm able to go in, and I have such an amazing support from the top down that says, hey, I've been here, here's how we're gonna take care of this. Even in moments where I make it messy. You know, my pastor is able to come in, my senior pastor specifically, and give wisdom that's been through years and years and trial and error. And sometimes I listen to the stories that you teach, and I'm like, thank God I never made that mistake. And I had to go through that because his story right now is saving me from that, because that's exactly what I would have done. But I would say advice and then the encouragement, support as one. Like, I don't know what I would do, because, you know, and I tell the youth interns this a lot. I'm like, you have this image of leadership in your head that says, once I get there, I have the respect of everyone and I have the love of everyone. And that's just a place to be. Like when I was a young leader, it's like, you know what? When you get there, that's exactly how it is. Everyone just listens to you. I found that most of my weeks, more people dislike me than they like me. You know, by the time I get to a Thursday night and I preach, the highlight of my week, or the moments of my week wasn't preparing the sermon, writing the message, getting ready to post social media posts. It was like students are mad at me because I'm asking them to live a holy lifestyle. Parents are mad at me because of something I said 2 weeks ago that the kid came home and said wrong. And then I get there on Thursday and there's a combination of all this. I couldn't imagine what it'd be like. I could, and it'd be terrible if I sit down at breakfast with my pastor on a Thursday morning after doing all those things, and he's like, you need to tighten up. You know, you're losing it. If I was genuinely, like I put in my heart, I'm my biggest, personally myself, like before anyone even when I make mistakes, before anyone says anything to me, I kick myself the most. And so to be able to go to my pastor and to hear in those moments, hey, even those moments where it's messy, I support you, I'm for you, you know, I'm behind you 100% of the way. And there's been moments, you know, where you've stood up for me, where Pastor Cody stood up for me in situations, and I would say like that environment. And I think for any youth pastor, just to know that they have the support, there's freedom to fail in a positive way. Yeah. I'm not talking about morally, right, more than I am like in leadership. And having that support coupled with that advice, I would think it makes the biggest difference mentally for any youth pastor.
Honestly, Pastor, if you are aloof or standing away from actually supporting your youth ministry, then you're creating the lack of generational fortitude. You must be actively loving your youth. Actively be around. My door is open all the time. It's not strange to get a young person or a young adult, Pastor, I love you, come in and give me a hug, sit down in my chair, ask me a question. In fact, it happened this morning. And, you know, it was a very interesting question. But in that, you've got to be willing to be touchable for your people. And your youth pastor needs to know that you more than just say you support him or her, you must support him or her. Because without that, you don't have a church. I think that's the scariest part. Is just because you got a group of people doesn't mean you have a church. It means you have a group of people, but for how long are you going to have that group of people? You're not going to have them generationally if you are not going to invest in the next generation. Now, what was really funny, while Pastor Cole was saying that, I'm watching Pastor Kayla go, you'll hear from her next week. So, what do you feel your greatest obstacle is in ministry with youth? Now, what I mean by that too, so you're gonna have to make you're gonna have to really focus on your answer.
Yeah.
Within the church.
Yeah.
And outside the church.
Within the church, I would say the greatest obstacle would have to be people understanding the brevity of where these students are at in life. And I think it'd be similar maybe for kids ministry as well, for sure. Because I feel the effects of whether that's going good or whether that's going bad. And Pastor Kayla is awesome. And we're able to collaborate and work together and focus on those things. But, you know, we're receiving students that have already been through trauma, that have already been through their life's environment. And they're already in a stage now where many of them are either, one, they're becoming extremely opinionated, or two, they're not learning about that. They've decided what they're going to say, how they're going to act, how they're going to be. And so I think sometimes you know, like it's almost that weird place, and I see it happen quite a bit between the relationship, even between parents and the youth ministry, where it's like, well, this is my kid. You know, for church family, it's like, well, this is my kid. He's still a kid. But on the back end, you're like, no, you don't understand. I know he's 13, 14, 15. I know that he's saying he's got these big dreams, or she's saying she wants to go do big things. And you're like, oh, that's so cute. But it's like, no, right now they're making those decisions.
Right.
Right now they're making those decisions whether or not they will be saved when they graduate. Because you can, I'm all for having your child in church in every service. If you're in this house, be here. I 100% co-sign it. But there will be a place where it's no longer out of their obedience, but it's out of their influence,
right.
Their influence from their family, their parents, their pastors, the youth ministry, whether or not they're going to continue in this relationship. So I think sometimes we think, well, they're in the building, they're here, I'm going to give them to you. You just raise them, take care of them. And I think that relationship between, number one, understanding the importance, and number two, getting parents and or guardians to see that and to see that it's a relationship.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Is it true or not true that some of the worst opponents of youth ministry are Christian parents within the church?
100% true. That is,
it's bizarre.
It's wild because you know what?
It's bizarre.
It's interesting to see, and I think that watching students who come from a place where there's low parenting, we have a lot of students who had the ability to do anything they wanted. I mean, if they wanted to not show up for a week, they could not show up for a week at their house. And a lot of those kids get to a place where they're like, well, I'm looking for, I don't even want unlimited access. I want answers. And it's really easy to work with someone like that. Now, church families a lot of times think that they have all the answers and that there's nothing that you could provide that is worthy enough or would change enough the condition, because why does it even need to change?
Right.
Well, I bring them to church, I do this, so.
But I know that we have families in the church where their teenagers don't come to youth ministry.
No.
And the moms and dads foolishly actually think that their kids are okay because they're coming on Sunday. But the truth is that they're not building good, godly relationships outside. So therefore, their influences are not really at home. Their greater influences at school.
Yeah.
Their greater influences are their friends. And by eliminating them from the youth ministry, in their mind, it doesn't matter. But what they're doing is eliminating the opportunity for kids to be saved and build godly relationships that will bring fortitude into that relationship rather than them just being on their own.
Yeah. I mean, we have them for if a student attended everything specifically for youth, we have them for about 3 hours.
Right.
Okay, they're at school 8 hours a day. So it's already there's a fight for building community.
Yeah.
Already there's a fight to say, will you establish your roots here with people who believe the same thing as you? So when that is taken away, or there isn't an emphasis on it, especially when, there's things that are good for us all the time when we're teenagers that we don't want to do, that we don't do, like brush your teeth, teenagers don't want to do basic things a lot of times. And it's well, we're going to have you do this because it's important. We're going to teach you the value of it, right? So your teeth don't rot. But I think with youth ministry, a lot of people, there is a place in the church where that is where they get, and they think, well, what's the importance? They're with family, they're here. But it's all about time, and it's all about relationship. And if your sports teams, if your school, if your after school curriculars, who your kids are hanging, all that matters. Because they're being influenced, or they're influencers, but someone is always speaking in their life. If it's not their youth pastor or their pastor as a source of wisdom, there is someone giving them wisdom. They're just teaching them, instead of how to preach the gospel, they're teaching them how to roll blunts, how to show up to parties. And I'm talking about church kids.
Church kids.
Yeah, I'm not just talking about.
You were one of those.
Yeah, I was one of them, yes. and that's the thing when church kids know really well how to manipulate the system because they grew up in it, and they know what they have to do. They know what hands have to look like on a Sunday morning, and they know when amens have to come. They're very culturally aware. So I think for the church, that is the biggest thing.
Now, I remember when I was a youth pastor a long, long time ago, I got a call from a dad, and he said, I'd like to see you. So Rhonda and I went down to their house. And it was a man that did not go to church. He was a very large man. He was 6'4". He weighed about 350 pounds. And he was a retired CO. not retired because of his age, but retired because he got hurt. And so his daughter was coming to our youth ministry. And he looked at me, we walked into the kitchen, and he was on one side of the table, I was on the other side of the table, and he looked at me and goes, I have a problem with you. I went, oh boy. And I'm mapping out my escape. Yeah, I was gonna let Rhonda fend for herself, but I was mapping out my escape. No, and here we are, this is what he said to me. Since my daughter's been going to youth group, she's worse than ever before. And I'm hearing from upstairs, because she's upstairs. I'm listening to the rock and roll she's listening to. So I said to him, I says, how many hours a day does your daughter go to school? I don't know, 6 or some odd hours. I said, do you govern her watching what television shows? Nah, she can watch whatever she wants. She's a teenager. I said, what about the music? Nah, I don't tell her what to do. You know, he wasn't born again. And I said, so you're telling me she's worse because she's been coming to youth ministry. We get her 1 hour a week. How many hours a week does the world get her? Oh, still, you should be stronger than that. I said, really? I said, the greater influence is the greater time. And so he still didn't get it. And the girl still today isn't following the Lord. But I put that on the threshold of the parent because the youth ministry was available. So, Pastor, thank you so much. I know that this is just a touch. Now, all pastors that are out there and youth pastors that are out there, I want to remind you of the Uproar, which is a free, that's right, the word is free, youth conference. They aren't around. They aren't made. You are paying usually $150+ to register for the youth rallies that you have to go to. And this is free. And this year we got Jonathan, is it Stamper? Jonathan Stamper coming. We have Chris Durso coming. We have Keenan Clark coming. Pastor Cody and Mindy, of course, will be here. And then for those who've been watching the Youth Group Chronicles, which is absolutely hilarious, and you don't want to miss that. You want to look that up on your Instagram. But the Uproar is a conference that is now being held this year in August. And you want to make sure that your youth are going to be here. What's the exact date here? It is August 1 through 3. You want to be here in Horseheads, New York. It's free. And we've already had it in Maine. Maine doubled the attendance, I believe, right in that vicinity. And it was what? It grew. Again, didn't double. It didn't double. It grew. But we're believing the Lord. We've been having 800 to over 1,000 teenagers here every year to a free youth conference with literally some of the best speakers in the United States to the youth. Also, on that website, youth pastors are training videos that you can get on and be trained in youth ministry. I know Chris Estrada, is Chris Estrada helping on those? Chris Estrada will be on those, as well as Pastor Cody is on those, and other youth pastors have been very successful to give you the ability to learn, to grow, to build the next generation. And pastor, go out of your way to be a blessing to your youth pastor and your youth. Hug them, love them. They need their pastor. And if the youth pastor has got any salt, he's always aiming the youth to the pastor. Yeah. So all of a sudden, the youth pastor's aiming their love towards you, because one day in 10 years, they'll probably be running the church or leaving the church, is you need to show them the love that they are cared about. And in this church, the youth know that their pastor loves them and that we support them. Yeah. So thank you very much for watching. The Uproar Conference, you don't want to miss it, August 1 through 3 right here in Horseheads, New York. And it will bring a transition. We have folks that travel how far, Pastor Cody? We have all over the place. I mean, like Texas. We've had them drive in from Texas before. You don't want to miss it. So be here, August 1 through 3, the Uproar. And youth pastors, get on that website and get some training. Get some training. You only know what you know. You've got to be trained. Grow. Pastor, send your youth pastors up here. Send them up. We'd love to have them sit with Pastor Cody and sit with Pastor Cole. And or if you have young people that are in your church that you know have a call, send them to Remnant Bible College right here in Horseheads, New York. We guarantee that they're not going to come back to you all messed up, full of arrogance. They're going to come back ready to work, and they're going to be a blessing to you. Thank you very much for watching Empowering Pastors.
Thank you for tuning in to Empowering Pastors and Leaders with Dr. Michael Spencer. If you're looking for helpful, life-changing, and empowering resources, Dr. Michael Spencer's books are available here. Just click on the link below and get your copies today. Don't wait. These resources will bring about the change and success you've been looking for. If you'd like to know more about empowering pastors and leaders, please visit michaelspencerministries.com. Also, if you'd like to become a partner with Empowering Pastors and Leaders, sign up online for the opportunity to do so. Thank you in advance for your financial support to help us reach into the U.S., Canada, Mexico, and Africa, and the different parts of the world. Empowering Pastors and Leaders will equip you to transform your personal life, ministry, or business to become the best leader God designed for you to be. Invest in yourself today and be the most effective leader you've ever been.